Historians contend that there was one small mistake with the design of the ship.
Plunge into the icy depths of history as we uncover 20 shocking truths about the ill-fated Titanic that have remained hidden for over a century.
Incredibly challenging to work at Titanic. It's dangerous. It's a very dangerous place.
From chilling premonitions to eerie coincidences, these lesser-known facts shed new light on the tragic voyage that continues to captivate our imagination. Number 20. People died on the Titanic even before its maiden voyage. The Titanic's tragic legacy began long before it set sail on its ill-fated maiden voyage. While we often focus on the lives lost at sea, few realize that death had already cast its shadow over the mighty ship during its construction. At the bustling Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, where dreams of an unsinkable vessel took shape, workers faced perilous conditions daily. The race to build the world's most luxurious liner came at a steep price, one paid in human lives. As rivets were hammered and steel plates hoisted, accidents lurked around every corner. Workers balanced precariously on scaffolding, their lives hanging by a thread as they worked at dizzying heights. The risk of falling was constant, and unfortunately some died plummeting from the ship's towering hull. However, gravity was not the only danger. The shipyard hummed with electrical equipment, and fatal electrocutions claimed unsuspecting victims. Meanwhile, the constant movement of massive components meant that falling objects posed a deadly threat to those below. Among the fallen were men whose names deserve to be remembered. James Dobbins, a young catchboy, lost his life in a tragic fall. Samuel Scott met a similar fate, plunging to his death from a ladder. John Kelly and Robert Murphy died from serious head injuries caused by falling debris. William Clark's life was cut short by a crane accident, while James Seward fell victim to a pneumatic drill mishap. These men, and others whose names have been lost to time, paid the ultimate price in the pursuit of maritime greatness. Their sacrifices serve as a somber reminder of the human cost behind the Titanic's grandeur. Number 19. More people could have survived. While the Titanic sinking is still remembered as one of the worst maritime tragedies in history, a startling new discovery reveals that the death toll could have been much lower. The loss of over 1,500 lives wasn't just a cruel twist of fate, it was a perfect storm of human error, outdated regulations, and missed opportunities. Let's start with the most glaring issue: the lifeboats. The Titanic set sail with only 20 lifeboats, far short of the 2,224 passengers and crew on board. Why? Outdated maritime regulations had not kept up with the increasing size of ocean liners. But it gets worse. Even these insufficient lifeboats weren't used to their full capacity. Some launched half empty, a tragic waste of precious space that could have saved dozens more lives. The chaos of that fateful night was compounded by a series of critical missteps. Distress signals were delayed, robbing potential rescuers of valuable time. When they were finally sent, miscommunication muddied the waters quite literally. Nearby ships, confused by the conflicting messages, hesitated to rush to the Titanic's aid. But the seeds of disaster were sown long before the iceberg struck. Structural flaws in the ship's design, particularly its watertight compartments, proved completely insufficient against the hull gash. And in a twist of bitter irony, multiple iceberg warnings had been received and ignored in the hours leading up to the collision. Number 18. The Titanic was competing with other major ships at that time. In the glamorous world of early 20th century ocean travel, the Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a floating battle cry in a high-stakes war for maritime supremacy. The seas were a chessboard, and shipping companies were the power-hungry players. The White Star Line, Titanic's proud parent, was locked in a fierce rivalry with the Cunard Line, whose speedsters RMS Lusitania and RMS Mauretania were the darlings of the Atlantic. Not to be outdone, German lines like Hamburg America and Norddeutscher Lloyd were also flexing their maritime muscles, determined to capture a piece of the lucrative transatlantic market. Enter the Titanic, White Star's trump card. Part of the ambitious Olympic-class trio, this Leviathan was designed to blow the competition out of the water. When it slid into the ocean in 1911, it claimed the crown as the world's largest ship, a floating palace of unparalleled luxury and cutting-edge technology. The Titanic was more than just a large ship, it was a revolution in comfort. First-class passengers could enjoy Turkish baths, squash courts, and gourmet restaurants. Even third-class accommodations were a step above the norm, a calculated move to attract immigrant traffic. But size and luxury weren't enough. White Star aimed to outmaneuver Cunard's speed advantage with a 1-2 punch of comfort and reliability. The Titanic was marketed as the safest ship afloat with watertight compartments and the latest in wireless technology. Tragically, this battle for supremacy had fatal consequences. The pressure to maintain schedules and impress passengers may have contributed to the fateful decisions made on that icy April night in 1912. Number 17. The largest movable man-made object of its time. While skyscrapers were only starting to appear in the sky, another enormous structure was creating actual waves. Not only was the RMS Titanic enormous, but it also redefined the limits of naval engineering. When it slipped into the waters of Southampton in 1912, it claimed the title of the largest movable man-made object on Earth. Stretching 882 feet from bow to stern, the Titanic was longer than 3 football fields laid end to end. Its gross tonnage is 46,328 tons. This floating city could house over 3,300 people. The Titanic's construction at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast was a Herculean task. It required a gargantuan gantry built specifically to accommodate its unprecedented size. The ship's hull alone used 3 million rivets, while its rudder weighed a staggering 100 tons. But size wasn't the Titanic's only claim to fame. It was a technological marvel, boasting 29 massive boilers feeding 2 reciprocating steam engines and a low-pressure turbine. This powerhouse could propel the ship at speeds up to 24 knots. Nevertheless, despite all of its majesty, the Titanic's tenure as the biggest movable object in history was sadly brief. Its sinking after just 4 days at sea sent shockwaves through the world, prompting a complete overhaul of maritime safety regulations. Number 16. The anchor was 15.5 tons. When it comes to the Titanic, everything was larger than life, including its anchor. This wasn't just any old piece of metal, it was a 15.5-ton behemoth. Crafted by the ironmasters at Hingley & Sons Limited, this anchor was a testament to early 20th century industrial might. To put its size in perspective, it weighed the same as 3 full-grown African elephants, stretching 18 feet 6 inches. The journey of this mammoth anchor from forge to ship was an epic in itself. Picture this. A team of 20 sturdy horses straining against their harnesses, hauling this iron giant through the streets. It must have been quite a spectacle, with onlookers gawking at what surely seemed like a piece of a metal mountain on the move. At the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, installing this titan was no small feat. It required precision engineering and nerves of steel to maneuver it into place. One wrong move and it could have crushed everything. The anchor wasn't just for show, though. It played a crucial role in securing the Titanic, which was designed to hold fast against the might of the Atlantic's fiercest storms. Ironically, while it was built to keep the ship in place, it couldn't prevent the Titanic's fateful encounter with an iceberg. Number 15. It was a coal-eating monster. We are going to explore the depths of the Titanic's coal-loving addiction. Not only was this opulent vessel a floating palace, but it was also a voracious beast with a diet that would make the most voracious coal miner blush. Every single day, the Titanic devoured a staggering 600 tons of coal, which disappeared into the ship's fiery maw every 20 hours. The ship's voracious hunger for fuel wasn't just for show. This black gold was the lifeblood that powered the Titanic's massive engines, keeping it steaming across the Atlantic at an impressive speed. Deep in the bowels of the ship, a small army of stokers worked around the clock in hellish conditions. These unsung heroes shoveled coal into the hungry furnaces, keeping the fires burning and the steam pumping. The Titanic's 4 enormous coal bunkers were like the ship's pantries, storing enough fuel to feed its habit for the entire transatlantic journey. But filling these bunkers was a monumental task in and of itself. Imagine the logistics of sourcing, transporting, and loading 6,611 tons of coal. Number 14. The wreck of the Titanic was somehow foretold. We're about to dive into the eerie world of premonitions and prophecies surrounding the Titanic's doom. It's a tale that'll make your spine tingle and have you wondering if some folks have a hotline for the future. Let's kick things off with the mother of all Titanic predictions. Morgan Robertson's 1898 novella, Futility or the Wreck of the Titan. Robertson spun a yarn about a massive ocean liner called, get this, the Titan. This fictional behemoth was dubbed unsinkable only to meet its watery grave after smashing into an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The similarities don't stop there. Both ships were about the same size, both were short on lifeboats, and both sank in April. This psychic powerhouse allegedly had visions of the Titanic's fate years before it set sail. Casey's supporters claim he foresaw a massive maritime disaster that would shock the world. Now, let's not forget the countless passengers who reportedly had gut feelings or vivid dreams warning them not to board. Some heeded these warnings and lived to tell the tale, while others brushed them off as mere jitters. Of course, skeptics argue that these predictions are nothing more than coincidences or the result of common maritime fears of the time. After all, shipwrecks weren't exactly unheard of in those days. Whether you believe in prophetic visions or chalk it all up to chance, one thing's for sure: these spooky foretellings have only added to the Titanic's mystique. They've become part of the ship's legend, a ghostly whisper from the past that continues to haunt us over a century later. Number 13. It only needed 3 smokestacks. The Titanic, that grand dame of the seas, had a little secret hiding in plain sight. Those 4 towering smokestacks that gave her such a majestic profile? Well, it turns out one of them was pulling a fast one on us all. In the early 20th century, ocean liners were locked in a battle of anything you can do, I can do bigger. More smokestacks meant more power, more luxury, and more everything. So the people at White Star Line thought, why stop at 3 when we can have 4? This phantom funnel wasn't completely useless. It served as a fancy ventilation shaft for the kitchen and first-class smoking room. But its main job, looking good. That 4th stack balanced out the Titanic's silhouette, giving her symmetry. The Titanic's quartet of funnels became iconic, a symbol of power and prestige that had everyone talking. Little did they know they were partly admiring an elaborate prop. This smokestack sleight of hand wasn't unique to the Titanic. Other ships of the era pulled similar tricks, all in the name of one-upping the competition. It was an age where appearance could be just as important as function. Number 12. Millions of belongings sank with the Titanic. In the depths of the North Atlantic, a staggering 6 million belongings lie scattered across the ocean floor, silent witnesses to one of history's most infamous maritime disasters. The RMS Titanic's tragic sinking didn't just claim lives, it swallowed an entire world of personal treasures, luxury items, and everyday objects. Among the submerged cargo were 3,364 bags of mail containing over 7 million pieces of correspondence. Letters penned with hope and excitement never to reach their intended recipients now rest in watery graves. The ship's hold was a treasure trove of opulence. Tiffany and Company china, designer clothing, and rare wines destined for America's elite were lost to the sea. Even a shipment of dragon's blood, a valuable tree resin used in varnishes and medicines, sank with the vessel. Personal belongings tell poignant stories of lives interrupted. Diamond-encrusted jewelry, family heirlooms, and cherished mementos disappeared into the abyss. One passenger lost a priceless copy of Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, adorned with 1,500 precious stones. The Titanic's sinking had far-reaching consequences beyond personal loss. Businesses suffered significant financial blows from lost inventory, while important documents and contracts vanished forever. While some artifacts have been recovered through underwater expeditions, the vast majority of these 6 million items remain untouched, preserved in the icy depths. They serve as a haunting reminder of the scale of the tragedy and the lives forever changed on that fateful night in April 1912. Number 11. The Titanic sank because of a supermoon myth debunked. It's time to debunk a lunar legend that's been floating around for years. You've probably heard the wild theory that a supermoon caused the Titanic's tragic fate. Well, it's time to sink that myth once and for all. Let's dive into the facts. Some researchers claim that an ultra-rare alignment of the Sun, Earth, and Moon on January 4, 1912 created extreme tides that dislodged icebergs, setting the stage for the Titanic's demise 3 months later. Astronomers and scientists have poked more holes in this theory than there were in the Titanic's hull. First off, the gravitational effects of a supermoon on tides are minimal. Moreover, the timeline doesn't add up. Icebergs don't travel at lightning speed. Those formed in January wouldn't have made it to the Titanic's path by April. So what really sank the unsinkable ship? Good old-fashioned human error and engineering oversights. The Titanic's collision with an iceberg, combined with design flaws and insufficient safety measures, sealed its fate. Captain Edward Smith's decision to maintain speed despite ice warnings, the lack of enough lifeboats, and the ship's inability to make sharp turns all played crucial roles in the disaster. These factors are backed by historical records and scientific analysis. Number 10. More than 1,000 bodies were never recovered. In the icy depths of the North Atlantic lies a haunting secret. Over 1,000 souls from the Titanic disaster remain forever lost. While the world mourned the tragedy of April 15, 1912, few realized the true extent of the human toll that would never be recovered. Of the estimated 1,500 lives claimed by the sinking, only about 340 bodies were found floating in the frigid waters. The vast majority, some 1,160 individuals, vanished without a trace, leaving families in a perpetual state of grief and uncertainty. The reasons for this staggering number of unrecovered bodies are as chilling as the waters that claimed them. Many passengers were trapped inside the ship as it plunged into the abyss, their final resting place sealed within the Titanic's steel tomb. Others may have been swept away by powerful currents dispersed across miles of open ocean. Maritime archaeologist James Delgado suggests that some remains might still exist in the deepest recesses of the wreck, such as the engine room. However, the corrosive effects of saltwater, deep-sea scavengers, and bacteria have likely erased most traces of human presence over the past century. The missing bodies represent more than just numbers. They were fathers, mothers, children, and dreamers, each with a tragically short story. Their absence left countless families without closure, unable to properly mourn or lay their loved ones to rest. Number 9. Miss Unsinkable. Meet Violet Jessup, the woman who defied death not once, not twice, but 3 times at sea, earning her the nickname Miss Unsinkable. Born in Argentina in 1887 to Irish immigrants, Jessup faced adversity from a young age, including a near-fatal bout with tuberculosis. But her resilience would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. Jessup's maritime saga began with the RMS Olympic, the largest ship of its time, where she worked as a stewardess. In 1911, the Olympic collided with the British warship HMS Hawke, causing significant damage but managing to limp back to port. Jessup emerged unscathed, but this was only the beginning. In 1912, she transferred to the Titanic, the so-called unsinkable ship. On the night of April 14th, Jessup had just finished her prayers when the Titanic struck an iceberg. She was quickly ushered into Lifeboat 16, clutching a stranger's baby, and watched in horror as the grand vessel sank into the icy Atlantic. Jessup survived, but the experience left an indelible mark on her. 4 years later, during World War I, Jessup found herself aboard the Britannic, now serving as a hospital ship. On November 21, 1916, the ship struck a German mine in the Aegean Sea. Jessup, who had just finished breakfast, was thrown into the water and narrowly avoided the ship's propellers by swimming away with all her might. Despite suffering a head injury, she survived yet another maritime disaster. Jessup's incredible story didn't end there. She continued to work at sea until her retirement in 1950, proving her indomitable spirit. She passed away in 1971, leaving behind a legacy of courage and endurance that continues to captivate and inspire. Number 8. Swimming was never an option. When the Titanic plunged into the icy depths of the North Atlantic, many passengers faced a chilling reality. Swimming was never an option for survival. The bone-numbing water, registering a mere 28 degrees Fahrenheit, turned the ocean into a liquid death trap. Within minutes of immersion, the human body would spiral into cold shock. Gasping for air, muscles seizing, and rational thought evaporating, even the strongest swimmers found themselves at nature's mercy. Hypothermia set in rapidly, with survival times estimated at a mere 15 to 30 minutes for most. The sheer distance to safety compounded the impossibility of swimming to rescue. Lifeboats, fearful of being swamped, kept their distance from the thrashing masses. Even if a swimmer could miraculously withstand the cold, exhaustion would claim them long before reaching help. Clothing, while offering momentary insulation, quickly became a deadly weight. The bulky life vests of the era, while buoyant, severely restricted movement. Some survivors, like Charles Jukin, the ship's baker, reportedly stayed afloat for hours. However, his survival is attributed more to alcohol in his system and luck than swimming prowess. The tragedy exposed glaring inadequacies in maritime safety. With only 20 lifeboats for over 2,200 souls, the majority faced a grim choice: certain death on the sinking ship or a desperate plunge into the unforgiving sea. Number 7. The Titanic was originally a mail ship. Forget first-class suites and grand staircases. The Titanic's true identity might surprise you. This unsinkable legend began life as a floating post office on steroids. That's right, the RMS in Titanic's name stood for Royal Mail Ship, a prestigious title that came with some serious postal responsibilities. While passengers sipped champagne on the upper decks, a team of dedicated postal clerks toiled below, sorting through a staggering volume of mail. The Titanic set sail with over 3,300 sacks of letters and packages, more than 6 million pieces in total. These clerks were the unsung heroes of transatlantic communication, capable of sorting a mind-boggling 60,000 items per day. The ship's design reflected its dual purpose. Alongside luxurious amenities, the Titanic boasted state-of-the-art mailrooms and a fully equipped post office on G-deck. Speed wasn't just about bragging rights, it was crucial for timely mail delivery across the ocean. When disaster struck, these postal workers showed extraordinary dedication. As icy water flooded the lower decks, they desperately tried to save the mail, hauling heavy sacks to higher ground. Tragically, all 5 clerks perished in their valiant efforts. The Titanic's legacy as a mail carrier adds a fascinating layer to its story. It represents an era when ocean liners were vital arteries of global communication, carrying not just people, but the hopes, dreams, and business dealings of 2 continents. Number 6. You can visit the Titanic wreck yourself. Ever dreamed of touching a piece of history? Well, for a cool $250,000, you can dive into the ultimate underwater time capsule, the wreck of the Titanic itself. But this isn't your average tourist trap. It's an extreme adventure that'll plunge you 12,500 feet beneath the Atlantic waves. A few companies have been providing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to individuals with deep pockets and even deeper curiosity since 1998. Forget luxury cruises. These expeditions are more akin to space missions, utilizing cutting-edge submersibles that can withstand crushing oceanic pressures. The journey begins with intensive training and safety briefings. Then you'll board a specialized vessel for an 8-hour descent into the abyss. As you approach the wreck, the ghostly silhouette of the Titanic emerges from the darkness, a haunting reminder of that fateful night in 1912. Explorers have reported profound emotional experiences upon seeing the ship's iconic features: the grand staircase, the Marconi room, and the massive propellers. It's a sobering reminder of the 1,500 lives lost and a unique connection to one of history's most tragic maritime disasters. However, these tours aren't without controversy. Concerns about further damaging the rapidly deteriorating wreck have led to calls for stricter regulations. The site is, after all, considered a mass grave and deserves utmost respect. Recent technological advancements have made these dives somewhat safer, but they remain inherently risky. The 2023 implosion of the Titan submersible, which claimed 5 lives, serves as a stark reminder of the perils involved. Number 5. Engineers' sacrifices. As the Titanic plunged into the icy Atlantic, a group of unsung heroes fought a desperate battle below decks. The ship's engineers, 35 men strong, knew they were facing certain death, yet they chose duty over self-preservation in a remarkable display of courage. These men, led by Chief Engineer Joseph Bell, remained at their posts in the bowels of the sinking vessel, working feverishly to keep the Titanic's vital systems operational. Their efforts were crucial in delaying the inevitable and giving passengers precious extra minutes to escape. In the face of rising waters and failing machinery, the engineers managed to maintain power to the ship's electrical systems. This allowed for continued use of the Marconi wireless, sending out distress signals that ultimately brought rescue ships to the scene. It also kept the lights burning until the very end, providing a small measure of comfort and preventing total panic among the passengers. The boiler rooms became death traps as icy seawater flooded in. Yet the stokers and firemen continued to shovel coal, fighting to keep the pumps running in a futile attempt to stem the tide. Their actions bought time for the evacuation of lifeboats, undoubtedly saving many lives. Not a single engineer survived the disaster. Their sacrifice was commemorated in Southampton with a monument inscribed, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Number 4. There were not enough lifeboats. When the Titanic set sail, it carried a deadly secret, one that would cost over 1,500 lives. The unsinkable ship had only 20 lifeboats, enough for a mere 1,178 people, less than half of the souls on board. This wasn't just an oversight, it was a catastrophic failure of safety regulations and human judgment. Shockingly, the Titanic actually exceeded the outdated British Board of Trade requirements, which mandated just 16 lifeboats for ships over 10,000 tons. Never mind that the Titanic weighed a staggering 46,000 tons. The law hadn't kept pace with shipbuilding advances. But here's the kicker. The ship was designed to carry 64 lifeboats. So why the drastic reduction? The White Star Line, prioritizing aesthetics and deck space, decided 20 was plenty. After all, the unsinkable Titanic was just its own lifeboat. When disaster struck, chaos ensued. Poorly trained crews and confused passengers led to lifeboats launching partially empty. Lifeboat 6, built for 65, left with only 40 aboard. Social class played a grim role too, with first-class passengers given priority access. The tragedy exposed the maritime industry's complacency. Captain Edward Smith had even canceled a scheduled lifeboat drill the morning of the disaster. It was a perfect storm of hubris, outdated regulations, and poor planning. Number 3. Musicians played till the end. 8 unheralded heroes held their ground as the Titanic sank, using a piano, violins, and cellos in place of life jackets. With a melody on their lips and harmony in their hearts, these courageous musicians, led by the unwavering Wallace Hartley, made the decision to meet their end. Survivors' accounts paint a surreal scene. While chaos erupted around them, the band calmly moved from the first-class lounge to the boat deck, their melodies a stark contrast to the panic and despair. They played ragtime tunes and waltzes, gradually shifting to more somber hymns as the situation grew dire. The final song remains a subject of debate. Many claim it was "Nearer, My God, to Thee," a hymn Hartley once told a friend he'd play if ever on a sinking ship. Others recall hearing "Autumn," which shares a similar melody. Regardless of the last notes, their music served as a final haunting lullaby for the doomed vessel. All 8 musicians perished that night. Their bodies were later found with instruments still strapped to them. Hartley's violin, recovered with him, now rests in a Titanic museum, a silent testament to his unwavering dedication. Their sacrifice didn't go unnoticed. Memorials sprang up on both sides of the Atlantic, honoring these men who chose to comfort others in the face of certain death. Their story has inspired countless retellings, becoming one of the most enduring legends of the Titanic disaster. Number 2. The Lost Wreckage. The RMS Titanic's wreckage, a haunting relic of one of history's most tragic maritime disasters, lies 12,500 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. Discovered by oceanographer Robert Ballard in 1985, the site remains a challenging and perilous location for exploration. The Titanic's resting place is a testament to the harsh realities of deep-sea conditions. The immense pressure at such depths, approximately 390 times greater than at the surface, combined with near-freezing temperatures, creates an environment that is both hostile and unforgiving. These factors have contributed to the severe deterioration of the wreck over time, accelerated by iron-eating bacteria that have been steadily consuming the ship's structure. Exploring the wreck is no small feat. Specialized submersibles equipped with advanced technology such as inertial navigation systems and high-resolution sonar are required to navigate the pitch-black depths and locate the wreck amidst the undulating seabed. The journey to the ocean floor takes over 2 hours, and once there, the submersibles must carefully maneuver around the fragile remains to avoid causing further damage. The discovery of the wreck has spurred ongoing research efforts aimed at understanding the decay processes affecting the Titanic and documenting its current condition. However, these explorations are not without controversy. The ethical implications of artifact recovery and the need to respect the site as a maritime graveyard are hotly debated. Balancing the desire to preserve history with the imperative to honor the final resting place of over 1,500 souls is a delicate task. Number 1. The Last Survivor. When the Titanic slipped beneath the icy Atlantic waves, it left behind a legacy that would span nearly a century. At its heart was Milvina Dean, a tiny passenger who would become the last living link to that fateful night. Born on February 2, 1912, Milvina was just 9 weeks old when she boarded the ill-fated ship. As the youngest passenger, she was blissfully unaware of the tragedy unfolding around her. In a twist of fate, Milvina was lowered into a lifeboat in a mail sack, her cries alerting rescuers to her presence. While Milvina, her mother, and her brother survived, her father perished in the disaster. The family returned to England, where Milvina grew up largely unaware of her connection to history. It wasn't until she was 8 years old that her mother revealed the truth about their brush with tragedy. For much of her life, Milvina shied away from her Titanic connection. However, after the wreckage was discovered in 1985, she embraced her unique role. She became a sought-after guest at Titanic-related events, sharing her family's story with a new generation. Despite her fame, Milvina never watched James Cameron's blockbuster Titanic. The loss of her father made the subject too painful. Instead, she focused on honoring the memory of those lost and educating others about the disaster's impact. Milvina's life came full circle on May 31, 2009, when she passed away at 97. Remarkably, her death coincided with the 98th anniversary of Titanic's launch. As the last survivor, her passing marked the end of an era, closing the book on first-hand accounts of that tragic voyage. Milvina Dean's story serves as a poignant reminder of the Titanic's enduring impact. From a baby in a mail sack to the last living survivor, her life bridged generations, keeping the memory of the Titanic alive for nearly a century. We are coming to an end here today. Thanks for watching, and for such top listing videos, subscribe to our channel.